I'm gonna have you write this down, okay?
Yep.
It's a quote by Winston Churchill. He said, "In critical and baffling situations, it's always best to return to principle." In critical and baffling situations, it's always best to return to principle. How many of you know right now we are in a critical and baffling situation, let's just say in the world, yes? Yeah. So in critical and baffling situations, helps to return to principle. And so what we're going to talk about today is a principled approach of living. And specifically when it comes to cleansing, getting rid of these household cleaners that are toxic, these cosmetics and personal care products that are causing more harm than good, that build up what we call bioaccumulation, and we'll go through what that word means, that it's important to live by a specific principle because there's a lot of, let's say, confusion and even chaos when it comes to the way the world is functioning right now. Would you agree with that? Yes. And so if you're, I know there's tons of familiar faces here today, and lots of you are, current patients, so you understand what we're talking about here. But for those of you who this might be your first experience with Max Living, welcome. How many of you, this is your, let's say first workshop. Raise your hand if this is your first workshop that you've been to. All right, give them a hand. Yeah, so what we're going to go through is not only what these toxic products are and how to, let's call it, spring clean them out of not only your house but also out of your system. We're also going to give you the opportunity to, if you are a guest, plug into the culture, get connected here to Max Living. And also for those of you who are part of Max Living Nation, this community here, at the end, I'm going to give you the opportunity to sign up for a 30-day lifestyle detox where over the next 30 days you'll get dripped out information on specific toxins that you're going to find in your household and your cosmetics and cleaning supplies, and how to get those things out in a, let's say, systematized step-by-step way that is not like feeding you with a fire hose all on one Saturday morning and you leave and it's hard to implement anything. Does that make sense? And so some of you know how to change, that you know yourself, that you know that it's best just to jump in and get rid of everything and maybe fill up a trash bag of the stuff. Most of you probably don't operate that way. And if that's the case, that's okay because that's the vast majority of people anyway. So Dr. Traci, we should probably introduce ourselves, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't you do that?
I'm Dr. Traci. I am one of the 4 doctors that practice here. I've been here since about this time last year, January 2020.
Yeah, so Dr. Traci started as a chiropractic assistant really however many years ago, and then decided to go to chiropractic school and become a Max Living doctor and then come back. She's been here about a year now. She's now also the co-host of the Max Living podcast. How many of you listen to my podcast? Raise your hand. Okay, so exciting news. We've got a Max Living podcast. They asked Dr. Traci and I to host the Max Living Nationwide podcast, so you'll see that. It just launched this week, so that's exciting, yeah? So subscribe and follow. So it's the top of your feed. That's a shameless plug right there. Really, as Max Living doctors, though, and there's hundreds of now clinics all over the country, and it's a growing network. We're made up of doctors and people, really in communities like this, of people who think differently, and maybe who are questioning some of the status quos, some of the norms, and who see that there needs to be a system-wide challenge when it comes to the way we practice health and healthcare and even medicine here in this country. How many of you recognize there needs to be a different approach to what we're currently offering? Yes? Okay, and so we're recognizing that the way that things are now need to change, and our purpose is to be the standard for natural healthcare where everyone say everyone is empowered to live to their full potential. And in order we want everyone to live to their full potential, that's got to start with who? It's got to start with us. It's got to start with individuals. So it's an individual effort. That means you and I, our households, our kids, our spouses. That means we take that collective effort and that approach to make sure we're doing it ourselves. And so instead of thinking about like the greatness of this, today I want you to think about you. Think about your household. Think about your kids. Maybe your kids are older. Maybe they're not older. Maybe you have grandkids now. Think about those people in your life, and maybe it's just you at your house, and that's okay too. But think about how you can go home and change and make some of these and take some of these action steps that we're going to lay out for you. Here's what I don't want. This to feel like you've been fed with a fire hose and there's just overwhelming amounts of toxicity that we're all exposed to, and then nothing changes. That would be the opposite of the outcome that we want to happen today. So if that's for you and you're taking tons of notes today, before you leave today, just take a few minutes to circle the 3 things that you're going to do leaving here. Does that make sense? It's not where you are today, it's where you're going. And so it's more important about the direction that you're moving rather than where you're here today. Does that make sense to you? Awesome. So let's jump into, we're toxic and we're exposed to a lot of chemicals. So if you want to go through that.
Yeah, so the essential that we're focusing on today is minimizing toxins. We're very intentional about using that word minimizing because, as Dr. Wilson said, it is nearly impossible to eliminate all toxins from our environment. We are exposed to toxins everywhere we turn. A lot of it is actually in our control though, because a lot of it happens in our indoor environments, our homes, the products that we choose to use. But some of it is also outside of our control in the environment, in our industrial world today. 70,000 chemicals are used commercially. We have 3,000 chemicals used in our food supply alone. And over 60,000 chemicals are used in the manufacturing process, in preservation and production of our food. So even the things that we're putting in our body to fuel us are adding to our toxic load. The EPA even estimates that our homes are 5 to 100 times more toxic than outdoor air. So if we want to increase our health, decrease our own toxic load on our bodies, we have to first recognize where all of these toxins are coming from. So toxins are found in water, in food, in our cosmetics, our personal care products, the cleaners that we use in our house, even our storage containers, which is pretty much everything that we interact with on a daily basis. So toxins are everywhere. So we recognize that they're in all of these products, but we need to take the proper action steps to actually decrease toxins because toxins ultimately cause damage in the body. They damage our organs, they damage our enzymes, they damage our cells on a very molecular level so they can actually change our DNA. So we have to be careful about the products that we're using. We have to be careful about what we're exposing ourselves to because when we have this damage in our body, that ultimately leads to sickness and disease. There's a whole category of toxins even called endocrine disruptors. Endocrine disruptors meaning that they cause imbalance in our hormones, which who thinks that hormonal imbalance is a bad thing? Yes, everyone knows that. And it's men, it's women, it's all of us. So we really need to keep an eye on what we're using in our environment for not only ourselves, but for our families too. Because when it comes to sickness and disease, we first have to eliminate the big myth that we're taught. I think a lot of us are set up with the idea that when it comes to diseases, our grandmother had it, our parents had it, so it runs in the family, we just have bad what? Genes, exactly, bad genes. We're programmed to default to this idea that life has just dealt us a bad hand. So that thinking, it's so dangerous for 2 reasons. 1, because it's inaccurate, and 2, because it completely removes all responsibility from the individual to take control of your own health. And really, you have so much say over what goes on in your life. Studies have shown that only 5 to 10% of cancers are purely genetic, which means that's good news for you. 90 to 95% of cancers are due to lifestyle, they're due to environment. So you get to control your gene expression. You are not a victim to your genes. You can choose to clean up your lifestyle, you can choose what you put in your body, and that will affect your health outcomes.
Which that's a very different perspective from than what you might hear outside of these doors, yes? Yes. Very different perspective. In fact, I know several of you, like Vicki, and several of you came to the masterclass series. Over 6 weeks, we talked through all the different layers of max living and the 5 essentials. And if you're not familiar with that language, 5 essentials, there's really 2 separate and distinct ways of looking at your health. One is that you are broken, that you're diseased, you're genetically flawed, and you're doomed to get whatever your mom or dad or brother or sister got, no matter what you do. That's one approach. The other approach, what we call max living, is an approach that takes a step back and says, no, your body is actually designed perfectly, that the body is actually vitalistic by nature, meaning that it's self-healing, it's self-regulating, that if you cut your leg right now, your leg's going to heal without you even thinking about it, that you have food digesting inside of you and assimilating and nutrients becoming a part of you, that you don't have to think about any of these things happening because, well, we say the greatest doctor in the world doesn't live at Johns Hopkins, doesn't practice the Mayo Clinic. The greatest doctor in the world lives where? Inside of us. So if that's the case and we recognize that that doctor, that our bodies are supernaturally and made intelligently, if we recognize that, then the step is, and I guess the approach is that doctor doesn't need any help, just no interference. And the question that we need to all ask ourselves is, what's interfering with our body's ability to heal? If it's designed to heal, we know that the cut heals on the leg when we cut the leg. And the question that people are starting to ask more and more is, okay, then why aren't my headaches healing? You know, why is it that my lower back is still a problem? Why is it that I still have indigestion or I still have gastrointestinal issues? Well, there's an interference to your body's ability to heal. And the goal of any doctor should be to identify the root cause of that, remove the interference, and let your body do what it's supposed to do, which is healed 100%.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I like that. I like
It's like
that.
church in here. That was
Yeah,
great.
if you wanted to give me some amens here, I mean, I like that. That's going to really help me up here. And so this idea of, you know, convention in the medical wisdom, and this idea over here that there's only one science, right? And there's only one way to look at the world, and there's only one truth when it comes to that. Well, let's just call that convention and conventional for the sake of this workshop. That there's a maybe alternative, and I don't even like that word alternative, but for the sake of this workshop, we'll say there's an alternative approach that says, actually, no, there is more than one way to look at this, and there is a recognition of maybe a different perspective on your science that you need to hear about. And so we'll call that convention, and for the sake of this workshop, we're going to teach and show you how to exit conventional.
How about root cause?
How about root cause? Yeah, we're talking about root cause. Yeah, we're going to talk a lot about that. So when we say exit conventional, everyone say exit conventional. Exit. The way I picture this is, who has seen The Matrix? Anybody seen The Matrix? All right. So do you remember in The Matrix when Morpheus hands out, like, he's talking to Neo, he's like, red pill or blue pill, right? And you can see it in his glasses, right? Like red pill, blue pill. And he's like, if you got a choice. And one pill represented his eyes would be open forever, and his world would be forever changed. He'd be able to see the injustices and everything out there. And there's maybe some stress that can come with seeing the injustices out there. Maybe when your eyes get opened, you see some of the destructive nature of how we're currently living. And I feel like that's the case. It's red pill or blue pill, because there's an easy way and just kind of going along with the status quo. And maybe the other way is maybe having some level of resistance to the status quo. And so we're going to call that exit conventional for the sake of this workshop. Amen? Yeah. All right.
And the idea of exiting conventional, it may present with resistance because it's thinking differently than the rest of the world. But I think what we need to anchor to is that when you do exit conventional and you choose your health, you choose the truth, there is so much freedom in that. So that's what I carry with me in exiting conventional. We're going to talk about some practical things too, exposing the top toxins. So we're going to start with cleaners. So up here, we have all of these examples of cleaners. The brand names are blacked out for a reason, so we're not going to name any brands.
It's because my wife is an attorney, and we don't want any defamation lawsuits coming after us.
Yes.
Amen.
But conventional cleaners, they are loaded with toxic chemicals. Chemicals like, I'm reading these because I can't pronounce them, so that's a red flag there if you can't pronounce a chemical. Perchloroethylene, which is abbreviated PERC, P-E-R-C, chlorine, ammonia, formaldehyde. Who knows what formaldehyde is used for? Yep, embalming, preserving dead bodies. So if you're using chemicals with formaldehyde in them, that's probably not a good thing for you right off the bat. Some examples are, this is a carpet cleaner. This is an oven cleaner. I want to highlight some of the ingredients in here. Now, there's going to be a QR code that shows up on the screen that leads you to a website called EWG, which is the Environmental Working Group. The website is ewg.org. And I use this website for everything. You want to run all of your products through it because it rates them on a scale like in school, A to F, on how clean it is. It breaks down the ingredients list and tells you the harmful effects that those ingredients have on your body. So all of these products we ran through EWG. This conventional oven cleaner, it gets an F on the website because it has chemicals like butane, it has petroleum in it, which have repercussions of asthma, reproductive issues, and cancer. Conventional oven cleaner. Let's pick a spray. So this is a all-purpose surface spray, extremely damaging chemicals in it. It also gets an F on EWG, and it has consequences of reproductive issues, infertility, developmental delay in kids. So if you have kids at home and you're using sprays like this to clean surfaces, to clean their toys and everything, developmental delay in kids, throw it out. Get a garbage bag, like he said, just throw it away.
Don't even donate it.
Don't even donate it, no, because you don't want other people to use that either.
I agree.
This one probably looks very familiar to all of us right now. Because we see them everywhere, at the grocery stores, at any sort of public area. These are generically disinfectant wipes, and these get a D on EWG because they have chemicals like alkyl dimethyl ammonium in them. Also, in quotes, other ingredients, which who knows what that even means. That's just a cover up for toxicity. But this also causes things like asthma. It causes developmental issues in kids, neurological disorders. And we use these all the time. A perfect scenario, you go to the grocery store. I went to the grocery store the other day, and you walk in and they hand you wipes to wipe down your grocery cart. Also, in terms of disinfectant, there's usually someone at the door waiting for you to put your hands out so they can squirt what into your hands? Hand sanitizer, exactly. So hand sanitizers are extremely toxic because they have chemicals in them as well. They have fragrances. And when you're looking through your products when you go home, if you see fragrance listed as an ingredient label, then that's just a cover-up for toxicity. It's basically a cocktail of chemicals that they don't want to write out the whole laundry list.
You can place the sanitizers in. People are doing that all the time. Mm-hmm. This disease thing.
Yes. That's a really good question. We're going to talk about things that you can swap out too, because that gets back to the whole idea of exit conventional. There are better things that we can use instead of cleaners and sanitizers. So when it comes to hand sanitizer, you can use just alcohol. Essential oils are good sanitizing agents as well, so things like lemon essential oil. As far as household cleaners, personally, I use Thieves Cleaner, which is an essential oil-based cleaner. Here you go. Some applause for Thieves. But that's usually for laundry detergent, for dishwashing, but mostly for surfaces in my home, I use equal parts vinegar and water. Super simple, it's really effective, and that way you know that you're not exposing your family to all of these chemicals.
Do you use white vinegar?
Mm-hmm, white vinegar. Mm-hmm.
So, who's used a QR code before? Not very many. So let me teach you how to do this. Listen, we all need to stay on the current cutting edge with technology, all right? So I'm going to help you today. So pull out your camera on your phone and just watch this. It's just like magic. You guys are going to be blown away if you've never done this before. So all you're doing, it's like you're going to take a picture of Tracy, but then move your camera over there to that black and white thing. And then when you do that, if you can get it without a glare, okay, it just did it. So at the very top, then all of a sudden it says open ewg.org in Safari, and then you click on that. Do you say click when it's an iPhone? I don't know, you're not clicking, but you're touching it.
Tap it.
Tap it. Mm-hmm. And then it pulls up a website. Isn't that crazy? So, isn't that magic, right? Exactly. So, old dog, new tricks. You're welcome.
Yes.
You're welcome.
EWG also has an app.
Yeah, EWG has an app. And hey, get on there, scroll through, really go through the ewg.org, and you can find, cosmetics, you can find household cleaners, how to rank all of these things, the ranking system, what to replace it with, etc. So ewg.org is a is a great resource for you. And if you didn't get that, it's just ewg.org, and you can see me afterwards if you want to play with the QR code.
So you mentioned EWG for looking up cosmetics as well. A whole other class of toxins that are extremely dangerous are heavy metals. And heavy metals have been linked to all of these disorders: cancer, memory loss, headaches, neurological problems. And studies have shown that heavy metal toxicity in the body is directly linked to diseases like Alzheimer's and dementia because it's damaging to the brain. And the reason heavy metals are so dangerous is because they're extremely sticky toxins. When I say sticky, I don't mean like physically sticky, but meaning that once they get in the body, it's extremely difficult to get them out.
If you're going to have your teeth done and you have mercury fillings, make sure you go to a dentist that has the international standards system process.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you get your own oxygen, you get a whole body drapery, they take the air and they take it out of the room, so it's negative air.
Yeah, so what she's saying right now, for those of you who can't hear her, is she's saying that if you're going to get your mercury out of your mouth, because you know the amalgam fillings uses what? Mercury. And that metal right there is one of the most toxic substances on planet Earth next to plutonium. And so that toxin inside of your body has all kinds of neurological effects, chemical disruption and enzyme disruption and neurological disruption, so it can pass the blood-brain barrier. And so you're thinking cognitive disruption, you're thinking brain fog, memory issues. Aluminum has been related to Alzheimer's and dementia-like disorders. Most of these heavy metals, even though aluminum is a lighter metal in the heavy metal category, it's still a metal that passes through the blood-brain barrier and stays in your system, and it gets passed down from generation to generation. So that's through what's called bioaccumulation. And when they studied infant cord blood, they found on average there's 287 chemicals that were passed down from mom to baby. And now think generationally, then now that next child, who then comes next, is still, unless there's something that disrupts that next child is going to be even more toxic than that individual child that was there the previous generation.
What was it called? What was the
Bioaccumulation?
Oh, no, what?
Oh.
The international standards for mercury.
Yes, and so find a good dentist. So we use here in Indianapolis, we use Dr. So. She is accredited and she's good. She took out she's several of our team, mercury fillings. One quadrant at a time, very safe, very effective. There's others, but that's who our team loves.
If you're at the south part of the city, Dr. Marla, M-A-R-L-A, she's the one that, she gives you charcoal before she does it. That's
Very good.
Hey, Nick, have you heard of Dr. Gordon? Because I think he is.
There's several doctors in Indianapolis. I don't know all of them, but it's a growing field of interest within dentistry. Yep. Becky, did you have something?
I had some amalgam fillings in my mouth back when I was a teenager. So, still get it out?
So that's something that, so you have to meet with that person, that dentist, to really decide, hey, is that still a metal that could be leaching? Many times it is. There's evidence just brushing over that causes that to then leach even more of the gaseous substances that then, again, where is that going? If that's in your mouth, think about where that is going directly. Gas goes where? Up or down? Up. Yep.
Question. Reducing aluminum. The two things that come to my mind is deodorant and aluminum foil. And aluminum cooking devices. What else?
baking powder.
So she's right with baking powder. So the question is, where do you get aluminum from? And what you'll not see on the screen on purpose is one of the most ways that someone gets most toxic with aluminum is actually injecting it directly into their arm via the regular and annual what? Flu shot, right? So aluminum is in your flu shot. You mentioned deodorant. Deodorant doesn't usually have aluminum, but antiperspirant does. So those will clog your ducts and your sweat glands. And that's why women more often will get those lumps or bumps kind of in this area, because if you clog those individual pores, and that is your body's way of detoxifying, and sweating is a way of getting these toxins out, you really don't want to clog that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
That's why you don't cook your food on aluminum foil either. You don't even wrap hot food with aluminum foil that will then touch the food. You really want to not grill on aluminum either. And that's why it's also, when we get to pots and pans, I know, I'm sorry, brother. I see that anguish right there. Yeah, listen, I grew up this way too, so it's also heavy on my side. So yeah, and so you don't want to necessarily grill or have that necessarily touch your food.
Mm-hmm. The first step is awareness, though. We're talking a lot about the things that you shouldn't use and the things that you need to get rid of, but there are also ways that you can use similar products but are much healthier for you, much cleaner for you.
And a lot of heavy metals come from your cosmetics.
Yes, a lot of heavy metals. In fact, a report called Heavy Metal Hazard studied 49 different cosmetics. So these are everyday face makeup products, which, by the way, kind of caveat, speaking mostly to the women in the room, because cosmetics for obvious reasons. But guys, if you know or love a woman in any capacity, also pay attention, because this is important for her health.
And it's 2021, so.
Let's not go there. We're not going to go there. But this study did a study on the 49 everyday cosmetics, mascara, concealer, foundations, and they found that nearly all of them had significant loads of heavy metal in them. They found in 96% of these cosmetics, they found lead. And lead destroys red blood cells. It also blocks calcium absorption. So if you have any concern whatsoever about bone density, osteoporosis, check your cosmetics. 60% of the cosmetics had thallium in it, which thallium is an extremely dangerous chemical because it's found in a lot of aerosols, so it can also be inhaled. But it's also odorless, which is a thing that we need to reconcile, because a lot of times fragrance is a good indicator that this is toxic. When you walk in somewhere, maybe like a perfume counter, and you kind of have that volatile reaction to scent, it tells you that it's toxic for you. But thallium is a chemical that doesn't have a scent at all. And historically, in the past, it's actually been used by murderers because it is a poison that is extremely difficult to detect in the body. So think about this, though. Yeah, write that one down. This chemical that has been used to kill people, you're putting on your face every single day. So definitely check your cosmetics. 20% of the cosmetics also have arsenic in them, which arsenic is carcinogenic, and it is a fatal chemical because it destroys ATP. Kind of getting into chemistry a little bit, ATP is the molecule that every cell in our body uses for energy. So if our cells don't have energy, then they die. If our cells die, our organs die, and if our organs die, what happens to us? Exactly. So check your cosmetics.
You'd be surprised how much of this shows up when we do heavy metal toxicity and really metabolic analysis and toxicity testing. You'd be surprised how many people are showing up with aluminum, with mercury, with lead, with arsenic, with cadmium. It's incredible. And some of these chemicals, plastics and microplastics, which we'll talk about that too, you're seeing it disrupt the metabolic pathways of detoxification within the body, that literally these pathways are shutting down. And so not only if you're getting toxic on one end, you're shutting down the pathways of detoxification on the other end. That's just a toxic bucket that is eventually going to then overflow. Does that make sense to you? And so again, exit conventional. How do you exit conventional with cosmetics? Again, you're going to have to analyze your individual products. And men, you're not exempt from this because you know, that red little tube that goes underneath your armpit, you know what I'm talking about right now, right? So that can clog your ducts, that you don't call it perfume, cologne that you spray on your body, those things that you're doing out in the shop or out in the garage or whatever. And you know, all of those things play a huge role in this. And even the smallest amount of exposure when accumulated over time has outstanding effects within the body. And again, it does bioaccumulate. Mm-hmm.
So exiting conventional, some practical steps: run all of your products through EWG. I know that especially when it comes to cosmetics, that's kind of a personal thing. Use what works for you, but try to take the ones that are most toxic and swap those out first. Like Dr. Wilson said in the beginning, a lot of the time it is kind of a slow turnover. Find out what works for you. like a good rule of thumb that I use for myself when it comes to personal care products is if I can eat it, then I can put it on my skin. Because anything that you put on your skin, it gets in your body. So with things like lotions, I use coconut oil a lot. That's a really good way. I use that to take off my makeup too. A brand that I trust, we don't want to name a lot of brands because brands get bought out, they change their ingredients or whatever. But as of right now, Beauty Counter products for skincare and makeup is a really good trusted one.
Yeah. And Vicki, you had a question?
But yeah, like if you wanted to wear cologne, is it okay to spray it just on your clothes?
Well, you wear your clothes all day long. So that chemical is going to stay on your clothes, it's going to get absorbed into your skin. If you want something that is a scent that will help, make you smell good, essential oils are a really good way to do that.
Yeah, there's specific essential oil blends that you can do that smell really good and also have some good benefits within the body, like bergamot and things like that, like for men, at least for bergamot and great smelling cedar. Again, you mix these all up. There's tons of these, these ingredients and these concoctions out there that you can just get on the internet and search for it, and you can find essential oil perfumes or colognes that you can make at home. Let's talk about pots and pans here. So this is one of the most common questions that we get, and also one of the top ways that you disrupt your hormones, that you also get these chemicals in your body that never go away. How many of you saw Dark Waters, the documentary called Dark Waters? Okay, that is one worth watching. And when you watch Dark Waters, I bet you'll go home and get rid of all Teflon cookware. Because these Teflon cookware has PFOAs and these other chemicals called PTFEs that not only get into your body, stay within your body. What they found with the DuPont is they found the herds, the animals that were developing these bumps, they're developing kidney failure, they're having these weird diseases, dying early, and they with industry, with DuPont, they tried to hide it. They knew about it. They knew it causes birth defects. So there's this one individual town that was getting cancer at an incredibly higher rate. And they found that DuPont was dumping the offshoot of making some of these chemicals into the water system, and it's getting the water system. And even through good filtration, we'll talk about water here in a second, it was still getting into not only what they are feeding with the cattle and the herds and the animals, but also the individuals. They are consuming this. And so these are called forever chemicals for a reason, because they never exit your body unless you're intentional with cleansing or detoxifying. So what are some of the maybe alternatives to use instead of Teflon?
Pots and pans, stainless steel. Stainless steel is going to be your best bet. Also ceramic, cast iron, those are good options to switch out.
Yeah, and so that go home, check so they tried to ban Teflon for a long time now, and it just the can keeps getting kicked down the road. With industry and lobbying, they're going to continue to push this back. Don't wait for the FDA and the regulatory bodies to ban something before you ban it yourself. Don't wait for them to come along. You're going to be waiting forever in many of these cases for them to come around and say, hey, this is bad, stop doing this, and let's start doing something else as an alternative. Yes, sir?
We found a really great ceramic pan. It's like advertised to be used in multiple ways, kind of like the catch-all. I think it's called One Pan, or it's from I think it's a place called Our Place, or I think it's called Our Place. It's online, maybe $100, and it's picked up every single one of our cooking needs.
Great. Yeah, and more and more manufacturers are coming out. Again, it takes more effort and costs more money, and again, that gets passed down to you. So even though it might cost more money, think about the long-term effects and the long-term consequences of doing something that's more cheap but unhealthy.
So what about the diamond technology that's now being advertised?
Yeah, so she's asking about the diamond technology. All new technologies, I don't want to be a first adopter on those things. There's not enough studies. Again, it sounds good. Let's not be the first ones to try it out on ourselves, is my thought on that. But it sounds like it might be something that is beneficial and good. But again, I don't want to be an early adopter when it comes to my health on the new technologies.
Will the working group tell us?
EWG has some information on, like a study on pots and pans. That's a good one.
The versatile pan he was talking about is called the Always pan.
Always pan. That's a ceramic one. Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Traci, plastics and microplastics. Let's talk a little bit about where these are coming from. Because when we again do metabolic analysis and toxicity testing, plastics is such a huge disruptor hormonally. How many of you have heard of BPA? How many of you have a pulse? Let's just make sure we're alive today. Okay. So BPA. So yes, BPA is a problem, and so yeah, you'll see BPA free on certain plastics. But it's not just BPA, there's BPS. There's the thinner the plastic, the worse that it is. And now we have to contend with microplastics. And where are microplastics found? They're found in a lot of different places. And what, I hate to even say this today, but it's sprayed in many of the things that we commonly use. Guys, surgical masks sprayed with a microplastic on the inside, and also has those PFOAs, those Teflon chemicals used in the surgical masks too. It's not something we want to breathe through or breathe in and day out. Maybe another reason on that. So microplastics is one of the reasons why we don't want our plastics to be sitting outside or in the heat ever. So let's say you do drink out of a plastic water bottle. You're on the go, you have to have something, you're thirsty. Better to drink than not drink and be dehydrated. Well, ideally, you want to drink out of something that is glass, ideally, but let's say you do get something that's plastic. The last thing you want to do is for that to be heated up. Because when you heat up these plastics, that leaches into the water, and now you're talking about getting into your body. Again, this hormone disruption replaces the endocrine, it destroys really the endocrine system, but it actually replaces one of the molecule heads. And so that individual hormone has nowhere to go, and then it floats around, and this is how you get really endocrine disruption, both male and female. And so think about hormone-based cancers right now. Think of how much that's skyrocketed over the years. Think about this. There's a Canada study that showed that the diseases such as fibromyalgia, multiple chemical sensitivity, diseases like MS, it went from 1.1 million in 2005, and then in 2010 went up to 1.4 million, a 25% increase, and the population only increased by 7%. You see these diseases that are skyrocketing right now, and what might that be coming from? Could it happen, just so happen to be that we're driving through the Starbucks, we get the cup, and that lid that we're drinking out of is what? Plastic. And now you're heating up that plastic. And you think about the chemicals that you get from that. The worst ones, by the way, the plastic cups, the lids, number 6 and number 7. That's a write or down. Does that make the other ones?
Have you looked at the plastic, like recycling? It has a symbol on it. It's a triangle, and then it has a number. Yeah. Okay, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah. So does that make the other ones healthy? No, it just means that those ones are the absolute worst. And black plastic is the absolute worst, no matter what the number is. Black plastic, whether that is the cup that you're drinking out of, or maybe it's the fork that you're using, or they put. What's worse, if you go to a restaurant, you get like a to-go order or something, they put it in the black plastic and aluminum foil on the bottom. You ever see that? Okay. So there's some obvious reasons right there why you wouldn't want to eat that food. Yeah, Keurigs, that's one of the reasons why I have never done Keurigs for that reason. It looks convenient, I get it, but I'm not going to heat up plastic and drink out of that.
What about the lids like for Yeti? Because these are stainless inside.
Yeah, the Yeti lids are not as bad. The thicker the plastic, again, you're still going to get some leaching out of that. But yeah, one of the ones that I almost brought it up here, the thermoses with the black lid, though, that's one that no matter the density of the plastic, I still wouldn't do that for that individual reason. Yep. So microplastics, you're finding that in a lot of different places. That's why, ideally, just go to a glass. So that's glass containers, that's glass storage, really glass drinking bottles again. That's why, you'll see hers up here. If we do disposable, that's the disposable is that way. Yep. My clicker broke.
Oh.
All right. Why don't you talk about water?
So toxins are in our water too, and we sometimes discount how often we use conventional tap water with brushing our teeth, washing our hands, even showering. The EPA has shown that there are 84,000 chemicals in tap water. So a 15-minute shower is equal to 8 glasses of harmful water. And think about this, when you're showering, typically you're doing warmer water that creates steam in the bathroom, and then you're breathing in that steam. So then you're not only getting the toxins through your skin, but you're breathing it into your lungs. Also, here's something that a lot of people don't realize is your shower curtain. Getting back to microplastics, if your shower curtain is made out of plastic, then you're heating that up with the steam from the shower, and then you're breathing that in too. So this is a really easy, quick thing that you can switch out when you go home. Check to make sure that your shower curtain is fabric, the outside and the inside liner. That'll save you a lot of toxic load. But when it comes to water, some good ways to make sure that you are getting clean water is by getting a whole house water filtration system. Reverse osmosis is the gold standard for that. If, like me, you live in an apartment though, the best thing to do would be to get a shower head filter and then get a filtration system for your drinking water as well. I know a lot of our team uses Berkey. That's a good brand to filter out drinking water. Berkey, B-E-R-K-E-Y. Testing my spelling. The one that I use in my home is called Alexa Pure. That's another good brand.
Yep. So within drinking water, you also are getting whatever somebody urinated out in terms of their medications or dumped their medications in the water, that gets recycled through. And then, so they found birth control pills in tap water. They found ADHD medication, so antipsychotics within tap water. And not to mention, what do they do to the water system to help with your teeth? Fluoride, and there's chlorine in there too. So, you know, there are all these things. If you were to, let's say, ingest a tube full of toothpaste with fluoride in it, what does it say on the back to do? Call who? Poison control. Okay, so how does that make sense then to drink water that has added fluoride in it? Okay, so in the name of dental health, very controversial even within dentistry, fluoride is. In the name of dental health, we've completely demolished our gut health, and we're influencing our microbiome. And so, you know, it's very controversial. You'll see eventually there has been individual counties who have removed them, not here in Indiana. You've also seen entire countries that don't do this and have then removed and went back on it. But again, there's a very powerful lobbying industry, so we can't wait for, you know, convention to come around. We've got to then ban it in our own households. So having a individual water filtration system, like a reverse osmosis at your counter, like Dr. Traci was saying, great. Whole house filtration system is another step up, so that water you're bathing in and showering from, that you're also not retoxing by doing that.
Are water softeners effective?
So when it comes to water softeners, you got to make sure that the salt that they're the salt that is being used in the ways that they're doing it is not going to cause toxicity. And so there's a company called Vitasalis who I use. They do have a water softening process that is not toxic, that is not going to be harmful for your minerals. I like Vitasalis for that reason, because they'll come in and they'll analyze your water and what specific toxins need to be removed from your individual water. So they came out to our area in Zionsville, and they tested the water, and they said you need to get lead, arsenic, cadmium out of your system, and so let's make sure that we are specifically targeting those. So I like Vitasalis for that reason. I have no relationship with Vitasalis. I kind of wish I did right now as I'm saying this.
Not an ad.
But no affiliate link or anything like that to be shared, so that's a shameless plug again.
How do you spell that?
Vitasalis. Vitasalalus. Does that sound right? Vitasalis. So just like sound it out, Google it, and Vitasalis. I'll get you a link if you email me if that didn't work.
Oh, we didn't do foods. So toxins in our food as well. We'll go through this quickly because I think we're pretty well aware that our foods are laden with toxins. That's why we always talk about eating whole foods, organic foods from the ground, God foods, not man foods, or food from manufacturer. But some common ones are monosodium glutamate, that's MSG. It's found in a lot of Chinese food. Aspartame. Aspartame is artificial sweetener. And something that I want everyone to know. So when I was a teenager, I worked at a coffee shop that's a big box store that I'm not going to say the name of.
I think I already said it once. So
oh, okay. So when you are drinking or eating a food that has a sweet taste to it, but the label says that it's sugar-free, so these flavored sugar-free drinks, it's because it has a ton of aspartame in it. And aspartame is carcinogenic. It causes cancer, it causes headaches, digestive issues, a whole myriad of health problems. So do not consume aspartame. It's in gum, it's in soda.
They put aspartame in everything.
Yeah.
We've done studies because our youngest daughter's diabetic, and it also turns into formaldehyde in your body.
So what you just said was important. Aspartame turns into formaldehyde in your body.
Kills the liver.
Destroys the liver, shuts down
Poison.
liver enzymes.
It is poison, yes. So do not consume any aspartame. Nitrates are found in processed meats, food colors and dyes. Those are a lot of times added to kids' foods to make them more appealing so that kids will eat them. But they have a direct link to neurological disorders, which would cause things like hyperactivity. And a lot of kids are being diagnosed when they really shouldn't be, with things like autism spectrum disorder and ADHD and all of that, but it's just because of the food that they eat and the condition of their gut. So,
what happens to the food that's in cans? Like I get organic tomatoes, but it's in cans. Is that bad?
So tomatoes, because of the acidity within tomatoes in the can, there's a BPA lining within most cans that will then pull that right into the tomatoes. So she mentioned something that I feel like is really important to highlight. There's we started with a quote by Winston Churchill saying, go back to principle. Principle that she mentioned that is very important to remember is there's food by God and there's food by man. Where do you think aspartame falls? Food by God or food by man? Man. Okay, so how about most of the pink, yellow, and blue packets? Food by God or food by man? Man. All right. So especially the yellow packet, they say that it's 0 calorie, there's no sugar, that it has all the benefits of sugar and the taste of sugar but no sugar. They've done studies that found that 25% of this never gets passed through the body. What does that mean? Where's it ending up? In your gut, stays within the body. And so what goes into the body needs to be assimilated within the body. But again, if it's food by man, you don't want that to be assimilated within and into your body. So there's a difference between, because here's the deal. I now have a relationship with many of the regenerative farmers in our area. And I've been learning a lot about regenerative farming. I'm really interested in this because how many of you heard that the soil is now depleted? How many of you heard of that before? And the reason why our soil is so depleted is because of our farming practices. We're continuously using the same land over and over and over again. We're not rotating crops. We're also chemically destroying the nutrients within our individual crop system. And so, the vast majority of people, they're not eating food by God for most of their food. What are we eating? We're filling up on processed foods the vast majority of our time. And so no wonder why we are so mineral and nutrient deficient when we test individual people and do metabolic analysis and toxicity testing here. We find that most people not only are toxic, but they're also very mineral and nutrient deficient. And there's only a few exceptions to that we found. That person who is eating almost entirely off of the land from a regenerative farm, that person who's been very intentional with supplementing for that which they couldn't get from the soil or the food that they're getting, that person who's out in the sunlight more, because how many of you know where does vitamin D come from? Yeah, sun hits the skin and then it starts to make it within the body, and the liver's involved there. And so that person who's really intentional with their life and not eating processed foods and loading up everything when it comes to filling up on dead nutrients, that person generally tests out decently well. But guess out of 100 people, how many of those people there are? Less than one. And so the reality is that most of us are mineral, nutrient depleted, or toxic exposure has caused that disruption within those pathways. And so I say all that because I think it's important to understand regenerative farming practices and know where your food is coming from. You've seen the label USDA what? Organic, right? So USDA organic, it's a good label, but a label kind of puts a barrier between you and the farmer. I feel like it's more important to know exactly where your food is coming from. So if you know that farmer and you can have a relationship with that farmer, maybe it's a farmer's market that you go to, that you have that relationship with that farmer, or maybe you're getting it directly from the farm. With COVID, there's been an increase in the number of people who are interested in going directly to farm to get their to get their food. There's now membership-based programs where you can do that. And so the label USDA organic just tells you that it's not necessarily been sprayed or it's not genetically modified, but it does not tell you all the other things like, is this from a regenerative farm? Are they rotating their crops? Are the birds following the herds? There's all kinds of things that would probably interest you if you really got a relationship with your local farmer. Jesse?
Are you collecting this information to hand out to us that is interested? Because I've seen your sign there where you said, hey, if you have a regenerative farm, let us know.
Yeah, so we're collecting all of our farmers and just relationships with our regenerative farmers and everything else. Mainly because if stuff hits the fan, we want to know how can we go straight to the farm and get food. And does that make sense? So like we want to make sure all of our community this is a safe place, that we know that if we have to get food easily and quickly, that we know it's coming from good sources. That's why we collected names of farmers here in the last couple months, just so you're aware.
Are you going to put it out to us somewhere somehow?
I'm just kind of holding on to it, and then it'll be so valuable. I just can't wait. Question is, how much would you pay for something like that, Jesse? No, I'm going to share it. We're just collecting it and having the initial conversations.
And I want to speak to the value of having a community like this, because all of us are going to go do our own research. We're going to find products that work, products that we like, things that are good to use, things that are bad to use. And so we get to come together and we get to talk about it. We get to share these tips with each other. And that's how we can collectively improve our health overall.
Yep. I want to talk about the way sometimes that we try to help ourselves and then mess it up. How many of you saw the Flintstones have aspartame articles that came out, or any of, you might have seen any of these, this one, the hidden dangers in your dietary supplements. Another one, natural supplements can be dangerously contaminated or not even have the specified ingredients. Dietary supplements, time to consider what you're really taking. You know, a lot of these are not FDA approved or even registered, and the problem is that we're trying to do net positive, but sometimes we do net harm by taking supplements. And so I want to be very clear on this. I used to come from the perspective of you can get all the nutrients and minerals and everything you need from your land. The reality after testing, it's just not the case. It's very difficult. It's been said that one apple, it would take 33 apples today to get the equivalent of that same apple just 2 decades ago. So we're just not getting it from our supplements. So I want to teach you how to look for the right things in supplements. What are you looking for? And with my position now, I'm Director of Nutrition for all of Max Living. I interview manufacturers, distributors, look and see what is going into the process. And Dr. Phil and I interviewed someone just yesterday and just asking some hard questions, because everyone says my supplements are the best. That's what I'm finding, is that all manufacturers say I have the best. But you got to ask good questions and know what to look for when you're talking about supplementation, because one thing is that you'll find is that in this world of supplementation, you'll find a lot of artificial flavors and colors and additives and sugar into the supplement itself, specifically sugar with the powders. You'll see that a lot. You'll see a lot of corners being cut with raw materials, with where they're getting the raw materials. A lot of the raw materials that come from the big box stores and the cheap supplements are coming directly from China. You'll find that the raw materials oftentimes have been sprayed with pesticides, they've been sprayed with herbicides. You'll find that there's even heavy metals within the individual nutrients that have not been tested. And so a couple things to look for. You want to get a product that's closest to its natural form. Ideally, that manufacturer knows which farms are involved when it comes to raw materials. So having a relationship with that manufacturer, knowing and trusting that brand, there's a couple of things that you also want to look for. GMP certified is important. That is a certification process that they have to then go through to test for things like heavy metals, the purity, the potency, to make sure what is actually claimed on the list is actually in the thing. FDA registered. So again, if you register with the FDA, that means they peer behind the curtain and look at your stuff. That takes money, that takes time, and that also takes transparency and vulnerability, which again, if they're cutting corners, they're not going to want the FDA to peer behind the curtain. NSF takes that another step beyond that. It not only looks at GMP certified and FDA, but also looks at bioavailability, and they do even further analysis. They come back annually to look at things to make sure that not only did you get the certification once, but then you're keeping up with the certification and holding true to your standards. And so, you know, our brand process, our brand promise is that we go through all of this. We know exactly where our raw materials are coming from. It's GMO free, it's gluten free, it's organic. There's no fillers, there's no artificial sweeteners. Anytime you ever see anything that's sweetened, like our powders, it's sweetened with stevia and even low amounts of that. So we're very intentional when it comes to this. And again, now with my position with Max Living, with the Director of Nutrition, I've had the opportunity to kind of peer behind the curtain a lot and ask hard questions. And I'm actually really proud of, you know, what we've been able to discover, and really proud of what we have. So when it comes to cleansing, because all the questions I typically get is, okay, I know I'm toxic. How many of you know you're like you might have been exposed to toxins at some point in your life? Raise your hand. All right. So the next step is like, what do I do? You know, okay, what do I do about that? You know, it's always best to test instead of guess, so I'm going to say that first. I'm not of the philosophy of throwing supplements at the wall and seeing which one sticks. That's never been my philosophy. I don't like that. But there's a couple things you can do on a regular basis to allow your body to cleanse at a higher level. One is called Max Cleanse. We formulated and developed this product intentionally with specific herbs in mind and specific nutrients to help open up those metabolic pathways of detoxification, but also to help really cleanse and get the stuff out of the system. This is a lighter detox. Thank you. This is a lighter. This is a lighter detoxification product that you can do on a regular basis. It's something that a lot of people end up just incorporating on a regular basis, knowing that they're exposed to the glues in the carpet and the walking in the aerosols that we didn't even really talk about a whole lot that are being sprayed, especially in this world that we live in right now. It's hard to go to any stores without knowing that they're spraying the tar out of everything. You go to a restaurant, they're cleaning the tables with all these ammonium-based products. They found these quaternary ammonium-based products are actually staying into the environment and also into your body. And so, you know, Max Cleanse helps on a regular basis to just know that your detoxification pathways are open. The detox system is a more strong detoxifying process. And so this has binders. It has, how many of you know what glutathione is? How many of you have heard of glutathione? Awesome. So glutathione has glutathione precursors. So it's a two-part system that used to be called daily detox, but it's so strong that really people should not be. Thank you, Vanna. This is great. It really shouldn't be taken daily because of the strong binders. You're going to end up with mineral depletion if you do this like daily for years at a time. And so not only does it have get to the cellular level with detoxifying, but then on the back end there's binders, so it's a two-part system to actually grab onto those individual toxins and cleanse those toxins from your gut and your colon. So this is a strong one. Some people, they need to start with the cleanse and then end up going to the detox system. The biggest difference between the two is the detox system is strong. It's very strong. And some people aren't ready for that. If they're going from, hey, if you're going from, you know, yesterday was a McDonald's lunch and you know, drinking out of plastic cups and, you know, cooking on Teflon, start with like the advanced plan, a nutrition plan of Max Living, like food by God versus food by man. Like let's start with the basics first. You shouldn't necessarily just go straight to this. Now, if you're going to commit to getting some of that stuff out of your system and all of that, and you're one of those people who just jump right in, okay, great. Start with the cleanse still, because that's going to be pretty strong, and you might end up getting detox-like symptoms. It's always better to test instead of guess. So, you know, I think that's the route that, in the philosophy that really is important to understand is, yes, you can start this if you know that, but I bet you're also mineral depleted or vitamin deficient. I also would be willing to wager that there might be some gut issues, because it's not about what you take, it's what you absorb. And so you can take all the great supplements in the world, but if your gut is inflamed, you're not going to be able to absorb that at the rate that you should be. Which really brings us to mindset, and this is really kind of the stress component. And can I just talk about this for a second? Because you turn on the news and you see what? A lot of negativity. Yeah, and I just pulled this. This is from this morning, so I just wanted to show you this from this morning. Just the news articles from this morning, because how many of you know that negativity and stress directly has an impact on your physiology? Amen? Oh, come on. Amen? Amen. All right. So we're walking into the mouth of a monster by loosening COVID-19 restrictions, experts says. That was from this morning. Another one from this morning. Coronavirus lockdowns have taken devastating, just listen to the language that they use, devastating toll on teens' mental health. Studies show they're right. More teens are committing suicide now than ever before, just so we're all aware. Avoid indoor gatherings this St. Patrick's Day, CDC warns. Just listen to how they're saying it. And so if the first thing we do in the morning is pick this thing up or whatever source that we use and whatever pop-up that we see, and that is just a constant infiltration of whatever is out there that now gets into your mind, realize this, it has a profound impact on your health, including your physiology and your mental health. So protect this upstairs. What goes into your brain directly impacts your physiology. And read the book Mind Over Medicine. Read Carolyn Leaf's work about switching on your genes. And turning on your, switching on your brain. Switching on your brain because of the genetic impact that it then has on your body when you allow certain negativity and stressful things to enter in. But remember this, it's not about the stress. It's that it's a stressor, it's how you respond to it. But how many of you know we don't need more stress in our lives? We don't need more of it, right? And so protect what goes into your mind and what you look at, specifically in the morning. So exit conventional is go through a news detox. Maybe it's time. How many of you believe that we need a news detox? Raise your hand. All right. I like this quote. This is from Tristan Harris, the president and co-founder of the Center of Humane Technology and former Google design ethicist. It's not about technology being the existential threat. It's technology's ability to bring out the worst in society, and the worst in society is being the existential threat. So it's not that the news is an existential threat, or technology is an existential threat, is that it can oftentimes bring out the worst in all of us. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Detoxifying your mind is something that you have to do every single day. Like you said, it starts first thing when you wake up in the morning. What are you filling your brain with first thing when you wake up? Is it good things? Is it life-giving things? Is it gratitude and joy? Or is it all of the garbage that's in the news? So that's something that we do for our mental health every single day. We've talked a lot about detox protocols, things that you may do seasonally to detox your body physically, but we also have to remember that at the very end of the day, your body is incredibly intelligent and it already has its own pathways and mechanisms for detoxing on its own. So the best way to support that is exercise. Your body naturally detoxes by sweating. So every day, if you can get to the point where you are sweating in some capacity every day, that's going to help keep your body in a state where your toxic levels are low, so that you don't get to the point where your bucket is overflowing with all of these things and you have to go the more serious routes. Like I said, important for seasonal detoxification to kind of reset your body, but if you're taking care of your body on a consistent basis, then you have a much better chance of warding off sickness and disease due to toxicity. So sweat every single day, move your body. The best way to get in a great workout to the point where you're sweating in a very short amount of time is high intensity interval training. We talk about that a lot. In the Max Living world, we call that Max T3. But it's 12 minutes a day, whole body movements, gets your heart rate going, and you will break a sweat. You can do it in your own living room. So sweat, release toxins that way.
How many of you have heard this though? If I eat well and exercise, I'm healthy. How many of you heard that? Or if I look good, I'm healthy. If I feel good, I'm healthy, right? Here's the question that I want to challenge that just a bit as we're kind of wrapping up. How many of you know someone who ate well, exercised, did all the right things and still got sick? Raise your hand if you know somebody like that. Okay. So is just eating well and exercise, is that really the definition of health? No, we all know somebody who got sick. And then on the other end, we all have like an Uncle Ed in our families, right? Uncle Ed, he smokes a pack a day, he drinks a fifth of whiskey, he shows up to every single family reunion, he sits in the corner, he lives to 90 and you can't kill him, right? So we all have somebody like that, and then on the flip side, we have Aunt Betty who did all the right things, but then died at 40 of breast cancer. So many times these people are in the same family, so we can't even call it genetics. And so what's the difference between an Aunt Betty and Uncle Ed then? And what's really the real definition of health? Well, the difference between Aunt Betty and Uncle Ed is how their body was responding, how it was adapting, and how it was functioning overall. How it was functioning. Uncle Ed was able to take in the smoke and all the different toxins and respond very differently to Aunt Betty. And so really the real definition of health when it comes down to it, and the reason why we're all here is to really understand this better and do better, is the real definition of health is how your body is functioning. And our bodies, as we've been talking about, are designed to function and heal at 100% capacity. And when you look at how the body is designed, and what we believe is that when the body is designed a specific way to take in toxins and take in things, well then the question is, how is it adapting to its environment? How is the body adapting to our individual world around us? And then also, what system controls healing and functioning inside the body? Because there's one system that is the most important system, but is also the most neglected by modern healthcare. And patients, I hope you know what system I'm talking about right now. There's one system that is the most important, runs, governs, and controls you, but is the most neglected and oftentimes overlooked in modern medicine. What system is the most important system in your body? Nervous system. So your nervous system controls all healing, all functioning, including your immune system. For every cut to heal, for every beat of your heart, for every breathing of your lungs. Information starts where? From the brain, goes down where? Down the spinal cord, out through the nerve. So every organ, every system is under direct control of this. This is the energy system within the body that is running you. What separates a cadaver from you is what? Is life. Is life inside of you, right? How many of you know if you cut a cadaver, cut the cadaver, all the enzymes, the immune system, the blood cells, they're all still there, but what's never going to happen? That cut's never going to heal. But if I cut your leg, Rick, what's going to happen? Your leg's going to heal. So what's the difference between you and a cadaver is life inside of your body that starts in the brain. And so we know how important this system is, but it is also a system that is the most delicate. That's why you have a skull to protect your brain. And then you have what to protect your spinal cord? Spine, right? So you have 24 individual movable vertebrae that surround and protect the brainstem, the spinal cord, the nerves, and those individual bones have to be straight from the front. When you look at yourself in the mirror, we should all take this test every single morning. You're brushing your teeth. Look at yourself in the mirror. Are your shoulders even? Are your hips even? When you look from the side, we should have nice and 3 curves. We shouldn't be forward like this. We call that granny posture. How many of you want to develop granny posture as you age? Thank you. No hands. So you have to be intentional with this over time if you're not going to go down that road. And if maybe you started to go down that road, you have to be intentional about doing something to correct that. And so 3 curves from the side, 1 in the neck, 1 in the mid back, and then 1 in the low back. And when your spine's in this position, there's no damage to the nerves, there's no problems there. The spinal cord and nerves are functioning and healing and doing what they're supposed to do, communicating at 100%. But what ends up happening is that we call it neglect, is neglect of all of that. Just think about the neglect that happens there from an early age. From an early age, you're taught to brush your teeth and to floss, take care of your teeth. Yet, how many of us from an early age are taught proper spinal hygiene, proper posture, proper alignment? No, what do? The very first trauma in life, do you know what it is? 87% of the time, it's a traumatic birth. We pull that child out by their head. Then what do? Think about kids now. What is now the new babysitter? If mom and dad want to have like 30 minutes to themselves, what do? Screen time, right? Here's an iPad, here's a device. And what's the position and posture of that child as they're on that? Is their head looking up at adults and developing that natural curve that I was taught is how these kids develop the curve? No, they're looking down. They're losing that natural curve. And you look at an x-ray of somebody who's 25, 35, 40 years old who has a loss of that curve or reversed curve. Not only is that bad on an x-ray, not only is that putting tension on the spinal cord itself, but the joints are actually starting to degenerate and deform in that position just to allow tension to get off of the spinal cord itself. Because of the stretching of the spinal cord itself, it should never be stretched. And so you think about, we're just talking about kids now, think about the injuries and accidents, the sports traumas. There's a Yale study that showed at 8.2 miles per hour or greater in a car accident that the spine can completely change. And the most important bone right up here, this is the most important, the top bone of your neck. Who knows what it's called? Everyone say it? Atlas. Thank you. You guys are great. I love that. All right. So your atlas bone, that's the Christopher Reeves bone that protects the brainstem and the spinal cord. Listen, that bone is what keeps your head up. It also protects the brainstem right there. If you talk to Dr. Traci and I or any of our doctors and we are going to be adjusted and we had one bone to be adjusted for the rest of our lives, we'd always pick that one. Why? Not that that bone is a problem for all of us. It's because that bone right there protects the brainstem. That area influences your immune system, your hormones, your heart. Think Christopher Reeves, AKA who? Superman, when he fell off his horse and injured that area, what happened? Everything shut down. Pacemaker, respirator, something to move his colon. So everything shut down from that day moving forward because that's how important that area is. Your atlas protects that area, but that's also the most commonly damaged in what we call subluxated bone. Everyone say subluxation. Subluxation. Again, this should be a review for patients. I hope it is, but you're going to learn it so you can go teach it, right? So subluxation is when one or more of those bones shift out of the normal position that causes tension on the brainstem, the spinal cord, the nerves, and wherever that nerve then goes is going to be affected by that. So think about how many people are walking around that you and I probably know who are walking around with things that are like headaches as a very common and obvious problem there. 9 times out of 10, somebody walks in with headaches and it's coming from this top area in the neck, and sure enough, you take x-rays and boom, there it is. Many of these times, these people have done all kinds of things to try to solve that problem, namely masking the symptoms, but there's an underlying issue. I wonder how many people are masking symptoms of underlying issues that they've never necessarily explored or wanted to find the root cause of their problem. And so you think about how this is working. There's a lot of warning signs to this of subluxation. You know, things like headaches, things like menstrual problems, things like weight loss resistance. There's a little gland in your neck, sits in the front of your neck that controls weight gain, weight loss, also hormonally, it also your effect of temperature control within the body. What gland am I talking about? Thyroid. And so that gland in the neck actually is controlled by your nervous system, C4, C5. And so again, we're just in the neck, but then think about nerves that go into your arms, into your shoulders, into your hands, carpal tunnel. We find patients all the time who have arm pain, shoulder pain, elbow pain, or carpal tunnel-like symptoms, and it's not coming from their carpal tunnel. In fact, they get surgery on their carpal tunnel and they still have carpal tunnel. How frustrating would that be if that's happened to you? We meet with patients like this. It's actually coming a lot of times from their neck. So, you know, things like the things that most people think about when they think about the spine, like sciatica, or they think about lower back pain, or they think about SI joint dysfunction, or their hips are off is how they typically will say that. But there's a lot of people walking around who are treating symptoms, but the underlying cause, they've never had exploratory x-rays or testing done to really find out and dig up the root cause of that. But not just find the cause. It's not just about knowing what the problem is. Ideally, you know what? How to fix the problem. Does that make sense to you? And then how the plan of attack to keep that fix really for how long? For the rest of your life. And so ideally, how long do you want to maintain spinal integrity and alignment for how long? Really for the rest of your life. And so if you're a guest here, there's 2 simple things to start with. One is there's 2 critical tests that I recommend to analyze the nervous system. One is called a surface EMG. It can detect the imbalances within the nervous system through the musculature. It's pretty crazy technology that's done by NASA engineers, and you run a scanner up the back. You can see where there's imbalance, where there's stress, where there's interference. That's step 1. Step 2 is actually to take a picture of it. That's objective. We can actually see where the bones are, see exactly where the nerves are damaged, ultimately which organs are going to be affected by that. How many of you have had x-rays done of your spine in the past? Raise your hand if you've had x-rays done. Okay, so we're looking at alignment. We're not looking for breaks, fractures, and tumors. In a medical situation, I've had patients all the time who will say, you know, I've had x-rays done. You ask, what did they say? And it's all about pathology there. We're not looking for pathology as much as we're looking for alignment, effects on neurology, how it's going to affect the function within the body. Does that make sense to you? And so if you've not gotten that done yet and you're a guest here today, the first step is get that done. If you've had 97% blockage of an artery or nerve going to your heart, raise your hand if you'd want to know that. Some of you are just want to wait for the heart attack. Okay, so we're going to do this again. If you had 97% blockage of an artery going to your heart, raise your hand if you'd want to know that. All right, and so that's why we discount, is because, listen, heart disease doesn't wait, cancer doesn't wait, and subluxation doesn't wait. So we give you a discount today. It's typically $135. At our workshop, we do it for $54. Just see the front desk before you leave. They'll help you schedule that. You'll meet with individual doctor first. We'll do all the testing initially. You'll come back on a separate visit, and we'll go through what we found with you. If we can help you with that, we're going to let you know that. If we can't, we're going to let you know that too. So we're going to be straightforward with you. We're not going to waste your time. I know you're not going to waste ours. So just as a follow-up as we close out, how many of you have already, you're a patient and you've already done the metabolic analysis and toxicity testing? Raise your hand. So I know there's a few, as I was talking, I knew there was a few of you who've done this. I recommend, and I brought Dr. Phil into the practice for this very specific reason, because I believe that everyone needs to know their body burden with toxicity and their metabolic pathways. I got tired over the years of just like recommending and almost guessing with supplementation without actually having a clear picture of what we're seeing. So this is really, you know how we do x-rays of the spine? This is really your x-ray of what's going on the inside when it comes to metabolic analysis and also toxicity. So if you've not gotten this done yet, I'm really proud of what we've been able to do here, because we're able to detect dysfunction before it leads to disease. So think about this for a second. When do we want to catch the problem? When it's full-blown disease and the wheels are falling off and now we have to treat disease, or do we want to catch it at dysfunction? Where do you think the vast majority of our time, effort, and energy medically is spent conventionally on dysfunction or disease? And what do you think costs more money, dysfunction or disease? What do you think costs more time, dysfunction or disease? Right, disease management. And so, you know, there's two tests on this, the hair analysis, but also the metabolic analysis, and also the lifestyle risk questionnaire. So this is a questionnaire that can also help determine, hey, what are some of the lifestyle things that you've done that you're exposing yourselves to? What are some of these chemicals that you have been exposed to? And also, what are you doing nutritionally? What are you doing on your daily life that could be contributing to sickness and chronic health issues? And it's amazing because on the back end of this, it spits out, I say spits out, it maps out your, from the 5 essential perspective, what you're at the highest risk of. So you'll see on this one, I filled this out as, I named this one fat, sick, and nearly dead. And so I filled it out just like that. And you'll see I filled this out with all the nutrition questions wrong, and so it ranked me as critical. It ranks you from max living to living well to vulnerable to high risk to critical. This is the first time we've ever had something where we can ask you a bunch of questions and find out what you're most at risk for within the 5 essentials. So I'm super excited about this to implement this. All included the MAT testing and the lifestyle risk questionnaire. The suggested price on that through our manufacturing is $1,495, so $1,495. I have friends and peers in this category who charge in these ranges more than this actually. I don't have any issues asking for those fees or charging for those fees, but I really wanted this to be available for all of our patient base, so we worked real hard on the back end with volume discounts to be able to bring that price down. For our individual clinic, we're able to get it down to $495. If you're here today, the workshop discount is $395 for the metabolic analysis and toxicity testing with the LRQ. And that does include the follow-up recommendations and review, and have recommendations for yourself to know what to do on the back end. So you have a really customized approach to your health and wellness, really a wellness quarterback when it comes to this. So I'd highly recommend at least starting with a customized approach and doing the initial testing to find out what is actually causing your problem. So a couple things. Who is thinking of somebody that wished they could have been here today? Raise your hand if you're thinking of somebody you're like, man, I wish they could have heard this. Okay, good news. We've got upcoming opportunity to get involved in the Max Living community. Patient Appreciation Day, you'll see that coming up. If you're thinking of somebody that you know needs to be here or you know needs to be a part of this community, make sure you register them for Patient Appreciation Day. That is a time frame where we are blocking off new patient appointments in our schedule, and we're giving that same discount that we just discussed, and we're donating all the proceeds back to Stand for Health Freedom. How many of you know what Stand for Health Freedom is? It's an organization that is fighting for our rights for medical freedom. And so standing for our health freedom, our medical freedom of choice in the matter of what pharmaceutical product we do or do not put into our bodies. Amen? Amen. Amen. Okay, so this organization is an important one, and so we're supporting that. All the proceeds during that 3 days of the Patient Appreciation Days are going back to Stand for Health Freedom. this is an opportunity for somebody to get discounted examination recommendations and really join the community here at Max Living Indy. So those 3 days are...
March 15th, 16th, 17th.
Say it again.
15th, 16th, and 17th.
So they could hear it. Yeah.
March 15th, 16th, and 17th.
Yep. And I mentioned the 30-day drip campaign of getting these toxins out of your house. That will be launched on March 15th, so be on the lookout for that. If you know, hey, I want you to send me information about individual toxins, where they're found, and how I can slowly get these things out of my house, then all you need to do is text the clinic number, toxins, that's toxins. And someone's asking about the clinic number. Go ahead.
317-749-0677.
Can you give that again?
317-749-0677.
Yep. So just text the word toxins, and again, that'll be rolled out on March 15th, and we'll start those, and you'll get individual recommendations for all of that. Listen, if you're doing the metabolic analysis toxicity testing, that's good for today. Just see the front desk before you leave. Any of our products, they're on sale today. They're 10% off. That's our workshop discount. Some of you I know just sit through this just to get that part. I have a feeling I know who you are at this point. I'm good with it. Yeah, and so that's all good for today. And listen, guys, as we exit here today, remember, red pill, blue pill. You're kind of exiting an alternative universe here, or alternate universe, and you're going back out in the world. Remember, be bold. I know during this time, it almost requires a new measure of boldness because of the resistance and just the different way of thinking out there. But this is kind of the release and launch to go back out there, speak with some authority. Right now, you know more than 99.9% of people what they know about health right now. Just by sitting in this workshop alone, if you're a patient, it's probably more than that. And so recognize this, that when you go out in the community, stand firm, be bold, but be vocal. We can't stay silent much longer. This is now time to speak up, speak with some authority, speak with some boldness. Even if you don't have the right words, just the choice of speaking up is really the first step. So be bold, speak up, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.